Hello and welcome to another episode. I am Brian the Unskilled Commander, and this is Deck Break It Down, where I take one of my decks, break it into its components, and walk you through some of the key cards of each one, and then what I was thinking about when I built the deck and what it's supposed to do. Whether or not it does that, that's up for debate. Today we've got the Third Doctor from the Doctor Who set. Now I'll be up front with you, I'm not actually a Doctor Who fan. I watched maybe one or two episodes, never got into it. Don't have anything against it, it's just not something I'm into. But I do have a friend that's into it, so I bought him one of the decks just so he could have the cards and kind of read them and check them out, see how decent they were. And then I bought a deck in the off chance he wanted to learn how to play. And then I ended up splitting a deck with my friend, ended up splitting a box of collector's boosters with my friend Dell, who's also a content creator on YouTube. Delicious God, you can check out his page by looking at my homepage of the channel, and it's down there in recommended. And I'll try and put the name in here as well. So I ended up getting a lot of cool full arts and foils and stuff like that, just because I'm a full art foil junkie. I love the collector boosters. That's what I go for. So anyway, I ended up really liking the idea of the Third Doctor. So he is a 2/2 with trample. And he says he gets +1/+1 for each non-creature token you control, and when he enters the battlefield you get your choice of either a clue token, a food token, or a treasure token. I thought it was interesting because I know there's a ton of good cards that create treasure tokens, especially, but also like food tokens are big now. So you could make a bunch of them, and he gets real huge and has trample, and it's commander damage. You try and get to 21, take out an opponent with one hit or something. But of course that's a great way to build a deck, or it's a fun way to build a deck at least, but it's not super great against multiplayer because you've got a bunch of opponents and maybe you take one person out, but once anyone sees that, they just keep blowing up your commander, so they cost more and more to cast, so it can be tricky. So that's one of the reasons why I tried this build and went into some areas that I don't normally do. So let's go ahead and break down the actual numbers. We starting off with lands. My normal 36. I really recommend you start out with 36 lands. If you really want to trim them down, you can take some out, but 36 or higher, really. 36 to 40 lands is going to be your sweet spot where you're really good on lands. Yeah, you'll get mana flooded every once in a while, but once I moved up to 36 from my normal 33, 34, I saw a big difference in how well the decks performed because I wasn't missing land drops as much. So that's a big recommendation. But there's nothing special about any of these lands. They're just blue and green, trying to get as much out there as possible. There's nothing special in those lands. Next up, we have artifacts. We've got 11 of those. For the most part, they're pretty standard. It's just your mana rocks, arcane signet, soul ring, everything you're used to. Two key artifacts, however, are Tamiyo's Journal. It's at the beginning of your upkeep, investigate, which means put a colorless clue token onto the battlefield, and you can tap it to sack 3 clues and search your library for a card, put that card into your hand, and then shuffle. So at your upkeeps, it's popping out a clue, which is going to beef up the Doctor. And if you have enough clues, you can go and search for a very specific card if you want, put it in your hand, hopefully play it. Just good, fuel for the Third Doctor's trample engine. Also, we have Collector's Vault. You can pay 2 and tap it. You draw a card, then discard a card, and create a treasure token. So every turn, you're almost guaranteed to draw an extra card because you pay 2 and tap it. You draw a card, you're going to have to discard, but even so, it's helping you move through your deck, and you're making a treasure token. So it's almost worth it just to make the treasure to, again, beef up the Doctor. So for the enchantments, there's 14 of them. For the most part, they're card draw or, a couple auras to make the Doctor unblockable or help get him through. But the key ones are Primal Vigor and Doubling Season. So Primal Vigor, if one or more tokens would be created, twice that many are created instead. If you put +1/+1 counters on something, you double those. Doubling Season essentially does the same thing. So there's a lot of cards in this deck that make the treasure tokens, food tokens, clue tokens. Ideally, you have one or more of these out, and now they're making double, quadruple, whatever, so that you can ramp up the Doctor faster and make him more powerful. Also, we've got another key one, Mechanized Production. You enchant a specific artifact that you control, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you create a token that's a copy of that enchanted artifact. Then, if you control 8 or more of artifacts with the same name, you win the game. So, you get mechanized production out, you equip it to, you enchant a treasure token, you're popping out treasure tokens at your upkeep, and hopefully you've got enough other things making them that you can go ahead and win the game on your next upkeep. So that's basically, not only does that help the Doctor, but it's an alternate win con within the deck. Next up, we've got instances. There's nothing really special about those. It's mainly just card draw and answers, things that are going to bounce your opponent's creatures, or give your stuff indestructible or hexproof or something to try and protect the Doctor. We also have sorceries. There are 14 of those. Again, nothing special really in the sorceries. It's mainly ramp and cards that make tokens, like I said earlier. Make a token, make a food token. Do this thing, draw a card, make a treasure token, whatever. Things like that. The one exception is, and this is a tough one to say, Irenicus's Vile Duplication. Create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, except that token has flying and isn't legendary if that creature is legendary. And it's only a 3-drop, or 4-drop. Costs 4 mana to cast. So you cast that targeting the Doctor, you make a copy of the Doctor that now can fly, so now you have a flying trample, whatever, that gets bigger every time you make a token. And that's one of the keys of how this deck is meant to perform better and actually have a chance at winning. Now I'll pause there, as it were, to go right into the creatures, which ties into it. So creatures, there's 15 of them, and the main creatures that are, if they're not making some sort of token, the important ones are Sakashima of 1,000 Faces, Spark Double, Sakashima the Imposter, and Uton Soldier. Those all, just like the duplication, they're going to make a copy of the Doctor. Only it's not going to be legendary, so the legendary rule won't destroy it. You get 1 or 2 of these spells going, you now have 3 or 4 copies of the Doctor. Ideally, you've got 3, possibly 4 Doctors on the field. Now, obviously, the copies will not count as commander damage, but the important part is that they're all going to have trample, and they're all going to be getting that same buff off of whatever tokens you control. So you swing the 3rd Doctor himself at whoever is the biggest threat, so that you're hitting them for commander damage, and you send the others at everybody else, or leave them up for really good blockers, thereby doing lots of damage and whittling down the board and hopefully taking the win. 2 other key creatures are Peregrine Took. He's a 2/3, and he says if 1 or more tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus an additional food token are created instead. So you play anything that says, oh, make a treasure token. Cool, well now you make a treasure token and a food token. And then finally, as you may have assumed in a token deck, we've got the Academy Manufacturer, a 1/3, and he says if you would create a clue, food, or treasure token, instead create 1 of each. Ideally, you get that out, start dropping all the spells that make other tokens. You get a ton of them real fast, 10, 20, 30, well, that's a bit much, but well, also if you can able to get out Doubling Season and the Academy Manufacturer, you're going to go crazy, and the Doctor is going to get extremely powerful. And with that trample, he's going to get through and deal a lot of commander damage to your enemies. Now, this is by no stretch a perfect setup. This is actually built off of cards I had. Luckily, I did have Academy Manufacturer because I had tried to make a clue deck earlier and it didn't work. You may have seen that in episodes back from in the summertime. And also I had Doubling Season and Primal Vigor because, my Squirrel token deck didn't really do what I wanted it to do. So that got pulled out of there when that got, torn apart for more parts. So I had those good cards, but otherwise I know there's better token generating creatures and creatures that have effects that would assist this deck more. There's probably, I might be missing 1 or 2 clone effects as well. Who knows? So that's the kind of thing that I'll look for in the future to try and upgrade the deck, but I'm actually really pleased with how he performs. Built off of just what I have, he actually becomes pretty powerful quick, and I can almost, I not always, but I can get a clone out. So now there's at least 2 of them. And I've actually won a game. I was on the Queen of Cardboard's Twitch stream. Definitely go check her out if you're not already a fan. She does Twitch streams every week. Really cool. Has a lot of cool guests. And I actually won on that game that I played with her with the 3rd Doctor and some other people. which surprised me because I kind of picked. I was like, well, it's one of my newer decks. It's probably one of my semi-weaker decks, considering it was built off of, the stuff I had, and it actually does well. So either that means I just lucked into some decent cards, or I'm actually getting better at building decks. That's, remains to be seen. But what do you think? How would you build the Third Doctor? Is there cards that you think are absolute must for this kind of deck that I should put in? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you next time.